So you have a new book coming out.
Yes.
All right. And it's about your life story.
Yes.
And we don't want to tell the audience everything about your life story, but you've had an incredible life story. So could you just, for the viewers, just a little bit, just briefly give us a background about what your book is about?
Well, first of all, I was born a biracial child, an Italian mother and an African-American father. And my birth mother could not keep me because my great-grandmother said because I was biracial, I could not join the family. So I was put in foster care here in Detroit, where I was born, for 6 months. And I was adopted by an African-American couple who lived in Saginaw. And they took me to Saginaw, and that's where I grew up.
And so immediately, I mean, you know, race has played a part in your life since the get-go. Let's talk about how that's affected your life. I know that, you know, growing up in Saginaw, and you probably faced racism on a daily basis. Can you talk a little bit about that to us?
The first time I realized there was such a thing as racism, I was 10 years old, and I was called the N-word by a little boy that I went to school with. I went to an all-white Catholic school in Saginaw, and actually I was the only African-American kid, Negro at that time, in the whole lower school. And I felt out of place. I didn't really feel accepted. I had a few friends, but they weren't really friends where I got invited to their parties and to their homes and so forth. And I knew, because I was being raised as an African-American child, and I had a wonderful relationship with my African-American relatives. So I was proud, very proud of it, and I knew there was something wrong with the relationships that I had. Then I got called the N-word, and I immediately reacted, and you'll see what I do to the 10-year-old boy in my book.
Well, I can tell you're a fighter. I have a feeling it probably didn't end well for him.
It did not. It did not. And then I demanded at the age of 10 that I be sent to a mixed school, and that was a school that was associated with the church that we went to in Saginaw. And I say in my book, I thought I was in heaven. Hispanics, white kids, and African American kids, and I really felt at home there. So I've always had I've always been proud of my heritage as an African American child and young adult and woman.
So growing up and after going through all this, when did you decide that you wanted to be a judge?
I didn't decide that until, in the early 90s. I wanted to be a lawyer. And the reason I wanted to be a lawyer was not to save the world. I had to make enough money to put our children through college. My husband was 25 years older than me, and he was white, at which the age and the race difference made no difference to us. I was 20 when I married him, and he was 45, and he was a former Roman Catholic priest, and I was the organist at the church where he was the assistant pastor.
You're smiling when you tell us that. Obviously, you want to talk a little. We have to hear a little bit about this. How did this happen? How did you come to know each other? Did you just start as friends?
Like I said, I was the organist, and he used to give me the hymns to play at Sunday Mass, and he gave me my paycheck at the end of the month, and I wanted to go to confession, and I was always afraid of that dark confessional that sat in the back of a Catholic church. It's dark. You talk to the priest through a little screen that's got a black cloth over it, and it was just scary to me as a child. So I asked him for an open confession, which means we're face to face. And I confessed. I have no idea what I was confessing at the age of 19. I don't even remember what I said, but he granted me an open confession, and I met him in the rectory in his office. After I finished my confession, he said, "May I talk to you about some things that are going on in my life?" And I'm thinking, wow, here's a 45-year-old white priest who wants to talk to me about things that are going on in his life. And it was at that time he said, for the past 2 years, I have been considering leaving the priesthood. And I immediately said in my mind, this isn't going to happen. First I said, there's no such thing. There was a mass exodus of Catholic priests leaving the priesthood in the 1960s. Mm-hmm. This is 1965 that we're talking about. And he pulls all of these articles out of his desk drawer about priests leaving. And I still said, you're not, what do you want to do? And he said, I'm lonely. I want my own family and I want my children. So I set out on a mission to convince him not to leave. For the next 6 months, I met with him, trying to convince him not to leave. In the meantime, this man is falling in love with me. And at the end of 6 months, I'm feeling something, but I dare not go there because of all of the differences. And, you know, I mean, my mother was upset. My father was not upset. My mother was upset. I had gotten called in by the bishop and said, you guys have to leave town. I mean, it was, you're going to hell. This is a mortal sin. And so the things that we went through to be together made it all the more strong.
So it's almost as if your childhood and going through all of the challenges that you did almost prepared you for that specific relationship. But there are many African Americans who they're not prepared for this. They're dealing with this sort of racial injustices all the time. So you've been through this growing up, and now you're going through this with a priest. And could you find solace in your parish community or no?
We did. We did not leave Saginaw until it was time to move to Oak Park so I could go to law school. I had an epiphany one day in 1971. I looked at my children who were playing on the floor, just little girls, and I looked at my husband who was almost 50, and I said, I got to get back to school. I started adding up the years. By the time it's time for him to retire, they're going to be ready to go to college. I got to pick up that money. I have to get into something that is going to allow me to make enough money to send our children to college.
Well, but you didn't just get a job as a secretary or a file clerk or something. I mean, you went all the way to becoming an attorney. Then you became a judge. You went all the way.
I did.
What was the motivation there? Just your kids, or was there something else?
No, my children. Yeah, my children. That was my motivation, and it worked. It worked. I put them both through the University of Michigan, and they're only a year and 6 days apart. So I had 2 at U of M at the same time, and he retired, just like I wanted him to do if he wanted to. And he told me when I said, I got to get back to school. We got to have some money in 15 years. And he said, well, the plan was for you to go back to school, but I don't have to retire at 65. And I said, I want you to have that choice. What I was looking for was peace from my mother, that household, and all that I went through with her. This man offered me a peaceful life. I also went through an abusive boyfriend. I was looking for peace, and I found it in him. And I was willing to do anything to keep that.
You also had, an adversarial relationship with your adopted mother, isn't that correct?
I did.
And how did you deal with that?
I just said to myself at the age of 12, I think, my brother left home. He's adopted also. He was not my biological brother. They adopted a boy and a girl. He was 4 years older than me. And at the age of 12, he left. He was 16. And I was upset with him because now he left me with our mother's wrath. I was alone with her. And when he left, I said to myself, one of these days, I'm going to be out of here too. I got to go along to get along. And that's exactly what I did.
So your story is amazing. I mean, just sitting here in the last 2 minutes, hearing what you're saying. So you couldn't be part of the family in which you were born because of the color of your skin.
Correct.
Then you were adopted by a woman. That relationship was tough.
Yes.
You had adversarial relationships at school as well. You had to move into a place where you finally felt like you belonged, where there were other people of color there with you. Then you met this man who was a priest that you fell in love with.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of a really high apple on the tree. But it wasn't something that you meant. So you've had challenges from day one. But I'm looking at you, and you are unbelievably happy woman.
I am.
How would you say that you got there?
Through my husband and my children.
Do you feel blessed?
Very.
And
Very.
you two girls are here, and they support you, and I know the very, very close relationship that you share with them. Mm-hmm. And what would you say to other people who are still going through some of the turmoil in their own lives because of race and color and so forth?
You got to keep at it. You got to work at it. You have to overcome it. You got to reach way down deep inside and get over it. That's why triumph is the first word in my book, the title of my book, because I feel I have triumphed.
Triumphed over?
A mother whose love was very conditional, and who, because of that, I felt that I would never be able to give unconditional love, but that's all I've been able to do all my life. The racism part, you know, I'm proud of my heritage, and just everything that I went through, I triumphed over, and I was successful in my career. I look back, the longest serving chief judge of one of the largest courts in the country and the largest court in the state of Michigan. I'm very, very pleased with my success, and my husband put me on the road to that. He really did. He was the wind beneath my wings, and I was able to fly because of him and the support of our 2 daughters.
And how many years were you married?
24. We were married 24. He had been a Catholic priest 15 years, and we were married 24. And I have a line in the book that says, a marriage that people thought would not last 24 hours lasted 24 years.
I can tell you still love him.
I do.
He's with you. He's with you every day.
I think so.
Yeah. Do you carry that love that you have, do you carry that to the bench when you make decisions?
No, you can't. You got to go by the law. You have to apply the law to the facts of the case. You got to leave all the personal stuff at home. So, you know, you get there and you're paid to do a job. You're elected to do a job, and that's the job that I did.
Anything else, Paul?
No, that's perfect.
You're amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.